The inner enemy. Dhammapada Verse 42, the architecture of mind. There are days when nothing particularly terrible happens, yet your mind feels heavy. No one insults you. No crisis arrives. The world continues as it always has. Still, a single thought repeats itself until it becomes a prison. A conversation is replayed. A mistake refuses to fade. A fear quietly invents tomorrow before tomorrow has even arrived. The Buddha recognized this long before the modern world multiplied our distractions. He saw that suffering often begins long before events themselves. It begins in the direction the mind chooses. Like a river that slowly changes course. The mind can quietly begin flowing toward confusion instead of clarity. And once that happens, the greatest harm often comes not from the world outside, but from the habits growing unseen within. Today we explore a simple yet profound teaching from the Dhammapada, where the Buddha reveals why the most dangerous enemy is sometimes the one we unknowingly carry in our own thoughts. A humble herdsman. In the kingdom of Kosala lived a herdsman named Nanda. He cared for the cattle of the wealthy merchant Anathapindika. His work was ordinary, his life uncomplicated. Yet he possessed something that often goes unnoticed. He was sincerely curious. Whenever he visited his employer's home, he sometimes heard the Buddha speak. These were not dramatic moments filled with miracles. They were quiet conversations about the human heart. Each time he listened, something within him became a little calmer. Eventually, Nanda invited the Buddha to visit his own home. The Buddha gently declined, saying only that the time had not yet come. The right time. Months passed. One day, while traveling with the community of monks, the Buddha deliberately altered his journey to visit Nanda. Nothing outside suggested this was necessary. But the Buddha understood something deeper than schedules. He recognized when a mind had become ready. For 7 days, Nanda welcomed the Buddha and the monks with great care. He offered milk, butter, fresh food, and simple hospitality. More importantly, he offered his full attention. By the final day, after listening deeply to the Buddha's teaching, something shifted within him. He saw reality more clearly than before. His heart had taken its first irreversible step toward awakening. The Buddha never hurried transformation. A seed cannot be persuaded to become a tree before spring arrives. An unexpected ending. As the Buddha departed, Nanda respectfully carried his bowl for part of the journey. After bowing one final time, he turned to return home. At that very moment, an old enemy hiding nearby shot him with an arrow. Nanda died where the road divided. The monks were shocked. They wondered aloud whether this tragedy had happened because the Buddha had visited. The Buddha quietly answered that death would have come regardless. No one escapes mortality by avoiding kindness. Then he spoke the verse that has echoed across centuries. An enemy may harm an enemy. A thief may harm another thief. But a wrongly directed mind can do far greater harm to oneself. The Buddha was not denying the reality of external danger. He was revealing that the deepest suffering begins much earlier than any arrow. The invisible direction. Most people pay attention to where their lives are going. The Buddha invited us to notice where the mind is going. A mind rarely collapses in a single moment. It drifts. One resentment becomes a habit. One fear becomes an identity. One desire quietly becomes the center of life. Like a boat that turns only a few degrees from its course, the mistake appears insignificant at first. Only much later does the destination reveal how far it has wandered. The danger is rarely dramatic. It is gradual. When thoughts become architects, a passing thought is harmless. A thought repeatedly believed begins designing your world. Suppose someone ignores your message. One possibility is simple: they are busy. Another possibility is that they secretly dislike you. The event is identical, only the interpretation changes. The Buddha observed that suffering often grows not from experience itself, but from the story the mind insists on telling about it. The architect of distress frequently lives inside the narrator. Fighting shadows. Many people spend years trying to eliminate every uncomfortable feeling. The Buddha suggested something surprisingly different. Instead of wrestling each thought, observe the movement that gives it power. Notice how attention feeds certain fears while starving others. The mind behaves much like a fire. Without fresh fuel, even the brightest flame slowly settles into ash. The one who sees clearly need not defeat every thought. Clear seeing quietly ends many battles before they begin. Understanding replaces struggle. The habit of becoming. The mind enjoys repetition. Every repeated reaction strengthens a familiar path, much like footsteps gradually forming a trail through a forest. Eventually, the trail feels natural simply because it has been walked so often. You may believe you are choosing anxiety, irritation, or self-criticism. Often you are simply following yesterday's footprints. The Buddha called attention back to the present because every fresh moment allows a different step. Awareness is where old pathways quietly lose their authority. The cost of carrying yourself. Sometimes people forgive strangers more easily than themselves. Years after a mistake has ended, the mind continues replaying it with remarkable dedication. No external enemy could remain so persistent. Imagine carrying a heavy stone in your backpack every day. After enough years, the weight feels normal. You forget it was ever optional. The Buddha gently asked us to inspect the backpack. Not everything being carried still belongs there. The modern arrow. Today's arrows rarely arrive from bows. They arrive through endless notifications, comparisons, headlines, opinions, and carefully designed interruptions competing for your attention. None of these are inherently harmful. Yet a mind without direction absorbs each one as though it were urgent. Hours later, exhaustion appears without an obvious cause. The Buddhist teaching has become even more relevant. What repeatedly enters the mind gradually becomes the atmosphere in which the mind must live. Borrowed identities. Modern life quietly encourages constant comparison. Someone else appears more successful, more attractive, more fulfilled. The mind begins measuring itself against carefully edited glimpses of other lives. Comparison is not merely unpleasant. It redirects the mind away from direct experience toward endless evaluation. A tree standing beside a river never wonders whether another tree grows taller. It simply continues receiving sunlight. The Buddha invited us back to our own ground. The gentle discipline of attention. Attention is the doorway through which every experience enters. If attention is constantly scattered, peace cannot remain for long. not because peace disappears, but because the mind no longer notices it. Many beautiful moments pass unnoticed while the mind negotiates imaginary futures. The Buddha repeatedly returned to simple awareness because the ordinary moment is where life actually unfolds. The peaceful mind does not create another world. It finally arrives in this one. Seeing before reacting. Imagine someone speaks harshly to you. Reaction happens almost instantly. Anger rises, defensiveness follows. Yet between hearing the words and becoming the anger exists a brief space. Most people overlook it. The Buddha trained people to recognize that silent opening. In that small interval, freedom quietly waits. Not the freedom to control others, but the freedom not to become every emotion that appears. The smallest pause can redirect an entire life. Freedom without victory. Many imagine inner peace as finally winning against the mind. The Buddha described something softer. Peace is not the destruction of thought. It is no longer believing every thought deserves obedience. Clouds continue crossing the sky. The sky does not become disturbed by their passing. Little by little, you discover that awareness itself has always been larger than the weather moving through it. Returning home. Nanda's story ends with death. Yet the Buddha never presented it as a tragedy alone. Nanda's greatest achievement was not avoiding mortality. It was meeting death after his mind had turned toward wisdom instead of confusion. Every human life eventually reaches its final evening. The deeper question is not how long we live. It is what direction the mind has been following while we were alive. Like migrating birds finding home by an unseen compass, the heart quietly follows whatever it repeatedly trusts. The enemy who becomes a teacher. The Buddha's verse is not meant to make us fear the mind. It invites us to know it. A mind left unattended may become our greatest enemy. The very same mind, understood with patience and honesty, becomes our closest companion. Nothing outside may change tomorrow. The same responsibilities will remain. The same people will speak. The same seasons will arrive. Yet when perception becomes clearer, the world is experienced differently. The greatest victory is not defeating the world. It is no longer allowing confusion to quietly govern your own heart. The river still flows. Only now it flows toward the open sea. This is Buddha Reflections, where philosophy, insight, and lived experience meet to explore mind, impermanence, and release. Thanks for your time. It's been a delight. What should we explore next? Comment, share, and save your insight. Subscribe to Orbital Dharma and keep your thoughts bright.